everybody, and welcome to the latest edition of the Rewatch Project of Hannah and Mike. I am Mike, and with me, as always, is Hannah. How are you this evening, Hannah?
I am very well, thank you, Michael.
You ready to podcast?
Ready to podcast.
Okay.
Let's do it.
We are back in the wonderful world of Babylon 5. We are on the 13th, I believe. Let me have a look at the television. 13th episode of Season 1, and namely the episode Signs and Portents. So, Hannah, please do tell us about said episode.
Okay, synopsis says, Londo obtains a priceless Centauri artifact and a stranger visits each alien ambassador asking only one question. It is directed by Janet Greek and written by JMS. So awesome. We're back to the showrunner.
Yes. Is the question that they're asking each of them, what's up? Do you think?
No.
Because that would be, ahead of its time, really, for a show in the mid-90s. So,
is Michael a dingus?
So,
yes.
that's an out-of-universe question, Hannah. So this is the first episode for a few weeks written by showrunner Michaeel Straczynski, as you pointed out, Hannah. So I'm expecting this to be more canonical, shall we say. But before we get into that, a couple of quick bits of housekeeping. First of all, a reminder that we do appreciate feedback. You can either email us at rewatchprojectpodcast@gmail.com, or alternatively, you can just leave comments right here on the channel and we will read those out if it feels appropriate to do so. Also, check out our friend shows, namely Chinstroker versus Punter, The Good, the Bad and the Odd, Talk Without Rhythm, and Film Bastards. And also do check out the other content on this channel, including the various music, film, TV, reaction videos, general pop culture goodness that cohabits this here channel. Also, likes and subscribes, very much appreciated. The more subscribers we have, the more conversation ensues. And that is a wonderful motivator for doing these more often. And last but not least, we also appreciate donations via PayPal if you can afford to do so without causing us off any financial hardship, because we certainly don't want that now, do we?
No, we don't.
So, Hannah, do we have any feedback?
We do have a couple of bits of feedback.
Capital.
Right. So, from the coolest of cool daddies on our last episode, By Any Means Necessary, Cool Daddy says, that complaint people have about spending on science, especially space, that we have bigger problems to solve down here first, grates on my nerves. Spending on science, by definition, has to be a leap of faith, because you can't say what concrete benefits to society will come from it other than knowledge. But the history of spending on science shows that it always has an impact on society. You just can't compute ROI.
Return on investment.
Right, okay. And sometimes we can't find the solution to our earthbound problems until we make the effort to go out there.
I mean, that's the whole thing about science, is you don't know what you're going to discover.
Indeed.
So it's I mean, I think that's an extremely well-made point that I categorically agree with.
Yep, samesies.
Yeah.
He goes on to say, JMS always said it would take more than a few hundred years to evolve past our worst human impulses. One way I've heard the B5/Star Trek difference described is that Star Trek is the goal, but Babylon 5 is how we get there. Yeah,
I think that's a really good point. It definitely feels like it's the journey to get there. It's almost like a prequel in that regard. But I think that the fact that
they're striving for utopia, but they're definitely not at a place where that's possible yet.
Yeah, and I think a lot of the connections to Star Trek are in the fact that it was made by somebody who was obviously a fan of Star Trek, but also the fact that it was contemporaneous with, the peak era of 90s Star Trek as well. So just the aesthetics and the sensibility and the production style are very similar as well. So it just inevitably feels of a piece in some ways. But those differences are absolutely, completely on the money.
Yep, I think they're both fantastic observations. Thank you, Cool Daddy.
Yeah, appreciate it. Okay, well, we're going to hit pause. We are going to watch said episode of Babylon 5. We were back in just over 40 minutes of our time, but probably just 30 seconds of yours. So what we'll do is we'll watch the episode, we'll come back, and we'll give you our non-spoiler thoughts on the episode. And we will also do an additional spoiler section if it feels appropriate to do so. So, we're going to get into it right now. See you shortly. And we are back. So we've just finished watching episode 13 of season 1 of Babylon 5, the episode Signs and Portents. So, Hannah, any initial thoughts on this episode?
I mean, this is a stone cold classic. I mean, it's quite hard to talk about it in a non-spoiler way, I think, because it's a very important episode.
Yeah.
I think it's very obvious to see that you're back with the showrunner in terms of the writing and the way that the story develops. I like the fact that all of the ambassadors are seen, even for a couple of minutes, because...
Yeah, pretty much the entire principal cast is in this episode, aren't they?
Because we've had so many episodes where it really has been featuring one or two characters primarily.
Yeah.
It was nice to kind of have that sort of overall feel. I mean, you know, people have probably all but forgotten about Kosh.
Yeah.
So good to see him.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh. Osh kosh bagosh. Yeah, just fantastic. What about you?
Yeah, I think there's a real density to this episode. And it's interesting as well because one of the things that's really unique about Babylon 5, and I remember
Babylon 5.
Babylon 5, yeah. Oh my gosh. It's all this
it's all that non-alcoholic beer drinking.
It's all that placebo now. One of the things about Babylon 5 that's really kind of unique, and I remember, I'm struggling with words at the moment. I remember at the time thinking this was really unusual, is not only do the episodes have titles, but the seasons have titles. And that very much gives the show a sense of it being a book.
Yeah.
You know, whether they're chapters or... I think the way you could look at it is that each episode is a chapter and each season is a book in a series of books. And season 1's overall title is Signs and Portents.
Yeah.
You know, so there's always this thing...
So this episode was always going to be significant.
Yeah, so there's always been this thing with Babylon 5 that, you know, each one of the albums has got a title track, you know. And there are other episodes.
Is this Babylon 5's Pink Pony Club?
Well, I mean, it's funny because there have been episodes prior to this one that are, you know, as significant, arguably, to the storyline. And there's other episodes later in the season that are as well. But this is definitely one of those episodes that helps sort of crystallize the mythology of the show.
Yeah.
You know, it feels a lot more substantial. And I think that this is, we'll get into this. I think we'll probably we'll definitely do a spoiler section. This is one of those episodes that's very interesting to rewatch because a lot of stuff that happens, it feels important, but a lot of the details don't have any context. People will say things and you don't know what it means. Yeah. But of course, when you rewatch it, you're like, oh wow, I didn't realise, I'd forgotten this was so early because you didn't know what any of it meant. But when you rewatch it, you know what it means, and you're like, oh okay, this story is begining.
On rewatch, it just confirms that JMS completely knows what he was doing. There's a method to everything he is putting forward. And it's really quite gratifying watching it again because you know what safe hands you were in.
Well, we've talked before about how the incredible restraint that he shows, you know, being able to have this sort of grand mythology written, but not panicking and feeling like you've got to show your cards, you know, trusting the audience, trusting that the show will succeed, because there was no reason to think, I mean, no sci-fi show, he'd written this to be 5 seasons long. No non-Star Trek sci-fi show in that era had ever gone to 5 seasons. You know, so it was a wing and a prayer.
Didn't.
Yeah, it was really touch and go. Every year they thought it was going to get cancelled. And, you know, I think most lesser people would have at some point panicked and thought, I'll just get to the money stuff and then people will be into the show. But he does show a huge amount of restraint. But one of the things that's satisfying about...
He went tantric.
Yeah. Well, but one of the things that's satisfying about this episode is he's starting to cash those chips in.
Yeah.
still very gradually, it's still only giving you a glimpse of this larger sort of tapestry of storyline. But it's very exciting when you watch it the first time to see this deepening of the mythology and of the characters as well. You've still got the kind of funny, banterous interplay between Jakar and Londo, but it just has more weight to it in this.
Yeah.
You see the fatigue and the emotion behind it.
Yeah, and with their, when Morden's asking each of them, what do you want? What you get from Londo and Jakar is that absolutely visceral anger from both sides. Jakar for pulverizing the Centauri for what they've done to them in the past, and Londo just yearning for the glory days. And so much anger and frustration. They both do it so beautifully.
And there are differences between them, because with Jakar, it's a kind of raw thing, and with Londo, it's much more of a sadness. It's much more of a kind of because
imagine that song, "Those Were the Days of My Friend,"
is
going on his head.
Well, I mean, Jakar's yearning is there for vengeance, whereas Londo's yearning is more of a kind of romantic yearning.
He's
not
romantic.
Got
his rose-tinted glasses on for sure.
It's this idea of the good old days, returning to the good old days,
where he felt important and wanted and needed and admired, probably.
And it's a little bit like, I think it makes me think a little bit of like the character of like Walter White, where, he always talked about how he did everything for his family, but really it was about him. It was about him
and
wanting
then he finally admits that at the end. That he enjoyed the power and the status.
It was about reclaiming his masculinity. It was about, the modern world is a world of compromise and, emasculation. And, you've still got that jungle, in you. And I think that's a little bit what's happening with Londo. Everything's become so civilized and nice that he just kind of, he doesn't really, the feeling I get is it's not even about the Empire. It's about him. It's about him wanting to feel the way he used to feel, and you see that with his romance with the dancer in the early episode. It wasn't, I don't think it was like he was like, I don't think it was even a sexual thing or him being a perv. I think it was just, it made him feel young. And it kind of brought that. And I think that what Londo wants ultimately is to feel alive. And I think the other thing that's interesting about this episode is that because of this plot device of Morden going and seeing all of the ambassadors, it tells you something about the ambassadors as well. Because the question he asks is so vague, it's a useful, there's an in-story reason for it as well that will become clearer as the show goes on. But as a dramatic device, it's really useful because it gives you an opportunity to see the characters.
Yeah. He's so like a little kid as well. Like, but what do you want? Yeah. But why? But why?
And the kind of the character is, this was the early 90s. So the idea, the sort of the pop cultural figure of like the yuppie was still very much in the public consciousness. And I think this idea of kind of banal evil is really interesting because they could have gone for somebody really mustache twirling, but to go for somebody who's, relatively young and kind of smiley and oily, almost somebody who almost feels like somebody would work in marketing,
trying to sign you up to a pyramid scheme.
Yeah. I think that was an interesting choice. To go for. And of course, we've seen the actor before. He cropped up really briefly in the pilot, playing a different character. So it's funny when you go back and rewatch the show now, you'll be like, oh, you know when someone's watching Babylon 5 for the second time because like, oh, it's Morden. And on that as well, it's worth pointing out that, did you notice the male character who was on the bridge of the station now? he's like a recurring second tier guy who's in the whole show. And this was the first episode he was in, because what I think happened was, because a few of them, the other bridge characters are still in it, but they get phased out. I think what happened was, and I say this in the nicest way possible, I think that JMS realised that some of them were just really crap actors. And I think he didn't care, because I think he thought, well, they don't have much to do, so it doesn't matter. But there is an accumulative thing when they're in every episode. After a while, you do start to notice. So I think he's like, okay, we need to bring in some actual actors to be on the bridge as well.
Yeah.
And it's funny because when you see that guy, he really stands out, because you're like, oh, he's actually got some screen presence, and, isn't just kind of like, they are coming through the wormhole, Captain, kind of like, because they're basically glorified extras, essentially.
Yeah.
But it's funny that guy, and he never really, it's not really a spoiler, I don't think he ever really gets his own subplot or anything like that. He's always just the guy on the bridge.
He's like who was the guy in the bar in Deep Space Nine who
like
never
more.
speaks?
Yeah. But he does speak, obviously.
I know, but yeah.
Yeah. So
same kind of thing.
It is interesting seeing that as well. I just think the fact that the show's been going on for a while and they're kind of recalibrating and are like, right, okay. Because the other thing as well, of course, is we're 13 episodes in. So not only have they made a bunch of episodes, some of them have probably aired by this point.
Yeah.
So they're actually this is probably one of the first episodes that's produced when they're getting actual feedback from viewers, and when they themselves have seen the episodes. So they're like making episodes now, knowing what the show's like. I think you're starting to see it. It feels like they're not flying blind anymore.
Yeah.
But they're actually being able to kind of fix certain things and refine certain things. But I think the key thing with this episode is that on rewatch and on first time watch, particularly I think when you watched it at the time in the 90s when television was very episodic and, was very procedural and, Adventure of the Week, Planet of the Week, is that this episode really signals that the show is trying to tell a large storyline. A couple of key things I want to sort of point out, just from my notes, are that you see Ivanova wake up. The episode starts with her, like her 4:30 alarm call.
Her.
Yeah, well, it's so awful because we talk about like work-life balance and well-being and not having your Outlook app on your phone, so you're not checking your email to get to work. But she wakes up at 4:30 and it's immediately like, right, do you want to be given a complete update on everything that's happened while you slept? It's like, what kind of way of to start the day is that?
That's like having kids.
Yeah.
Mum, can I do this? Can I watch this? Can I eat this? I'm very hungry.
It's like I wake up and I'm just lying there waiting for the...
Do you like how I've completely trained myself to do that?
Yeah. He wouldn't even try it on you. But yeah, so what we've got here is seemingly two separate plots. It's the Seinfeld thing again. We've got the thing with the Raiders, and he almost feels like, oh, that's just a B plot, so there's an excuse for a bit of space battle stuff. But we learn that it is all connected. These two storylines converge at the end as well. And we see Morden when he comes to the station. He mentions that he's been out exploring on the rim, and they ask him if he's found anything interesting, and he says yes, and then just doesn't give them any more information. It's also interesting that Jeffrey Sinclair, Jeffman, brings Garibaldi into his questions around the Battle of the Line. So that's another indication that this episode is gathering up the storylines and kind of create. It's like, because that hasn't really been mentioned since the pilot. Well,
it's sort of had some impetus, and then we had that run of standalone episodes. So it's not really been at the forefront.
Well,
it's
a secret. I mean, there's no way it could have been talked about.
But even like little tidbits towards it.
So Londo is obsessing about the eye, and this idea that it's kind of like a holy grail almost. It's this sort of important, piece of antiquity that, like a lot of things in mythology, kind of gives power to somebody. But you get the feeling that they're maybe overestimating it a little bit, that it's not going to suddenly
Pretty sure
magically...
I saw one on Temu for
yes.
$20.
I also love the elevator scene between Jakar and Londo's great, because I love the way the conversation starts, because they're standing there in silence and Londo just goes, I hear there's a famine on your planet. And you can see on the surface he's being sympathetic, but you can hear the subtext of it. He's like, ha ha ha. It's like, it's tragic that you're having a famine. And
I would be that person stuck in the middle, trying to avoid the conflict.
I've also want to point out that the spell check on the note-taking app on my phone hates Babylon 5, because it always corrects Morden to modern, and it always changes Kosh to Josh. And it's like, I've got an image of like Kosh, but with like a suit jacket and Ray-Bans, like
Josh Kosh.
Yeah. Like, kind of almost like, the 80s look where you've got a suit jacket, but with nothing underneath it but a tie on, like, kind of.
Like a keyboard tie.
Yeah, keyboard tie. Old Josh.
Josh Kosh.
But so Lady Ladira and Lord Kiro come aboard as well. She's a seer. So, this is something that we learn, that the women on Centauri Prime have this kind of this seeing ability, this clairvoyance.
Psychic ability.
And she looks all spooked as well. And Kiro says, she just has a load of mad ideas. She said I would be killed by shadows, and that's a term that's used several times during this episode. And
I love how he's like, crazy old bitch.
Yeah. Just totally.
Just does not take her seriously at all.
And there's some scenes in this that do almost feel like Twin Peaks. They've got that level of kind of delicious mystery to them. Like when Morden goes to see Delenn, and they're just talking, and she sort of sees like a shadow pass over his face, and a triangle appears on her forehead, and immediately she just flips out. And she's like,
get out.
And it just, even though when you watch it for the first time, you don't know what it all means, it feels like it means something.
Feels significant. Yeah.
And she says they're here. And you get some really small insights into the way that the universe works as well. Like the fact that when they found the eye, Kiro and Londo talk about how, well, we'll have to say that we found it back home because we don't want people to know that we've just paid for it. And then so you're getting a sense of just the kind of underhand cynicism.
There's still a lot of face saving going on.
Yeah. And, there's that moment where Kiro's leaving and he says, where did it all go wrong? Where did we lose it all? And I love the way that Londo...
I love how Londo plays this.
Yeah, because he's like, I don't know. It's like there's real regret and disbelief. It's like, it's almost so, it's like their empire has been on its arse for years, but Londo's still just dumbstruck by it. He's just like, how did that happen? How did they die? How did it happen? He wonders. I love the way
Mike was about to bust out one of his accents.
I love my many accents. I like the sketchy Thomas Jane looking guy with the mullet who's lurking around, looking all dodgy. And I've got a note here about
talking into his sleep.
Yeah. I've got a note here about Josh's ship, his party ship. But I love that. I love the kind of rippling sort of skin on his ship.
I love how it looks like a plant.
Yeah, it does. It looks completely organic. And Morden goes to see Londo, who says that he basically wants things back the way that they were. Kiro gets taken. There's a space battle with the Raiders. And the funny thing was, you made a comment about the effects at the beginning of the show. But I've got to say, one of the things that I do like about it is that, they're not like photorealistic like Star Trek, but the scale that their choice to use CG so early in CG run just means that once you adapt to the look of it, they can do stuff that they'd never have been able to have done with bubbles at the time. So I actually
thought the CG was better further on in the episode than at the beginning.
I think they use a lot of stock shots for some of the establishing ones. So there are probably effects that were done like 6 months before then.
Yeah.
But
it just looked, to my eye, slightly Amiga 500.
Yeah. And
but, that I don't find that to detract from it at all.
And the other thing that's worth mentioning as well is I think this is something that might get lost to people watching it now, even people who were around then, is it's really easy to forget how ahead of its time CG on television was. I mean, Jurassic Park had only just come out. Terminator 2 had only just come out. So to be doing this stuff on television, on low-budget television, is insane.
Especially, TV then is not like it is now. Like, it's not... It was definitely the lesser medium.
Oh, yeah.
Viewed as the lesser medium.
Yeah.
Not by fans, but by the industry, really.
I mean, television was viewed in the same way that, like, music videos.
Far more throwaway.
And advertising. It was just seen as this kind of frivolous thing that you watch once. And, and that was it. It was on, and you'd half watch it while you were cooking on a much smaller screen than we watch television now.
But, I mean, that really has changed over, I don't know, the last 15, 20 years probably.
Television existed for advertising, ultimately. Television was just a reason to get people to watch adverts. And so it is, when you watch this now, again, like a lot of these things, you have to have that full context.
Yeah.
But they escape. I like the fact that the baddies have got a yellow jump gate as opposed to a blue one. It's interesting that we learn...
It's giving lightsaber colours.
It is, isn't it? It's interesting that we learn that Kosh has been damaged. And I also really like...
Gosh.
Yeah, I know. He's had a Bosch.
He got Bosch.
Yeah, he did. He Boshed Kosh. But I really like the staging in some of these scenes. Like, because I like the way... There's a couple of false endings on this episode. Like, I like the way that when... Lady Ladira looks down into the coffee cup, and you see in the reflection the jump gate open, and we see
it's kind of like an epilogue through her vision.
Yeah, and it feels almost like Twin Peaks or something, where, and then you see,
especially considering it's black coffee.
Well, you see this giant, like, spidery looking thing that doesn't look like any ship we've seen so far. Attack Lord Kiro and the Thomas Jane looking tough guy. And I like the way that when it ends, we get a slow motion shot of her dropping the cup and it smashing. And again, that just gives it a kind of esoteric importance, feeling of weight.
I loved her scene with Londo. Sorry, not Londo, with Sinclair. When she's explaining that the future is always changing and this is one possible future.
It reminds me of the scene in the pilot in the Chinese sand garden between Delenn and Sinclair, where she talks about how, if you throw a stone on that, it changes the pattern. And that's a really central theme of Babylon 5, this idea of free will, this idea that it sounds like a cliche, the whole one person can make a difference, but I think this show explores that idea in a really interesting way.
Very much so. And when she says that we shape our futures with, our thoughts bring our futures into shape,
you can do it in a bad way as well.
Absolutely. You can sort of negatively affect yourself thinking, oh God, we're going to blow up, or whatever it is. You sort of end up overcorrecting and bringing those things into fruition.
Well, also, and we'll see this, with certain characters in this show moving forward, but sometimes it's moments and choices that don't seem big, that can define who we are, and can change our path for the better or for the worse, And I think that's a really interesting idea, this idea that, sometimes what seems like a mundane moment in our lives can...
Actually is very powerful.
Can be really sort of tremendously important. And Londo get given a gift from friends he doesn't know he has. We also learned there's really actually did cram quite a lot of information into this episode that Sinclair was quite low on the list to command the station, and all of the others were vetoed by the Minbari. And as you say, we get Lady Ladira shares her vision, so it definitely feels like there's a storm coming, so to speak. And any final thoughts on this?
Just no notes. Perfect. 10 out of 10. Loved it.
And one thing as well I want to point out as well, because I've grumbled before about this kind of age of television and content and entertainment that we live in, which is all about getting you to click on the next episode, and it's this kind of anxiety-inducing way of consuming entertainment where you're not enjoying what you're watching, you're just thinking about the next thing.
What's going to happen
next. And, information. And one of the things I want to point out here is that, a lot of the time people talk about Babylon 5, it was great, the story was written in advance and it's laid out. One of the things that Babylon 5 never forgets to do is to exist in the moment that the story's at and stage it and perform it well. So, the direction and the acting and just the moments in this episode work as filmmaking and as drama. It's not just about finding out secrets or what's in the box. No. It's very much about enjoying what you're seeing whilst it's happening, because it's just damn good.
And that's actually a real reminder to not get carried away with waiting to find out what those secrets are, because you will find out. There's, you're guaranteed you're going to find out.
But I don't think that's a problem. I don't think that's even a temptation with Babylon 5, because the show doesn't dine on that stuff.
No, but I know how I get if there is a really kind of delicious mystery, but you do want to keep watching to find out. But gathering speed and wanting to watch it and gather that speed up, you kind of miss some of the smaller things.
Yeah, true.
And that's really important.
Yeah. All right, what are you talking about next time, Hannah?
The next episode is called TKO.
It's a love TKO?
It's what?
You must know that song. It's a love TKO.
No.
It's a love TKO. Oh, no.
Okay, anyway.
You know what I'm talking about, gentle viewer.
Synopsis says, a disgraced boxer comes to Babylon 5 to compete in the Muay Thai, an alien fighting match. Meanwhile, an old friend visits Ivanova so that she can mourn the loss of her father.
All right.
It is directed by John C. Flynn III and written by Larry DiTilio.
Alrighty then. So a quick reminder that we appreciate feedback. Leave comments here on the channel. Donations via PayPal, also very much appreciated if you can afford to do so without causing yourself any financial hardship. Check out our friend shows, and likes and subscribes, also very much appreciated. We'll be back very soon. Goodbye.
Bye.
And we're back. Yes, we are going to do some spoilers, Anna. Thank you for reminding me. I actually have some very specific ones, if you don't mind indulging me. So,
I mean, we have to do a spoiler part for this one.
Yeah, I mean, the first one I've got is obviously when they said to Morden, did you find anything interesting on the Rim? What we learn is that he was on the interplanetary expedition ship with Sheridan's wife, who accidentally awake the shadows. Mm-hmm. So not only was he converted by them, he was partially responsible for waking them up. The sleeping giant. The other thing we've got is hang on a second.
I always the character of Morden. It's so random, but I always think of the stop on the northern line of the tube, Morden.
Yeah.
The northern line is black.
Yeah.
Like the shadows.
Yeah. And obviously Morden.
And Morden is an absolute shithole.
Yeah.
So it kind of makes sense.
Yeah.
It's a place where evil would lurk.
And we've talked before about how the shadows and the Vorlons element are, and the Minbari as well, I guess, are very much part of the big Lord of the Rings influence. And of course, Mordor, also, Zahadun is the planet they were on, Khazad-dûm in Lord of the Rings. So there's all of those comparisons. Also, one thing that I don't think I even caught this the second time I watched Babylon 5, but when Morden is talking to Delenn and she's building something, she's putting something together on her desk, you see her doing that throughout the whole season, and she's building the thing that she goes into, the chrysalis at the end.
I hadn't.
And it's just subtly dropped in throughout the entire season, and by the end of it, she's got this thing and she gets into it, and it's almost as though JMS is doing it just to prove that it's a plan. He's literally got her over the whole season building it, but this is the first time where it really starts to become apparent that she's actually building something there. So that's an interesting thing that is a sort of second or third watch.
That I've got kids. I just thought, oh, she's got magnet tiles.
Yeah, they do look like those, don't they? The other thing I want to mention as well, I mean, there's loads we could do with this one, but the other one that springs to mind is, when Morden goes to see Kosh, and he's standing there.
Josh Kosh.
And we've got to stop this because there's going to be a lot of Kosh talk. I need to quash the Kosh. I do, though, seriously. So when he goes to see him, you see him standing there looking intimidating, and then we learn that Kosh's encounter suit has been damaged.
Yeah.
But of course, what we don't know at this point is everywhere that Morden goes, he's got two invisible shadows. He's got one on either side of him. And they're like these, giant Starship Troopers, spindly spider death monster things. So, of course, what the implication is that they had a scrap.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And Kosh got a bit damaged by, a couple of the aforementioned murder spiders. So, loads of stuff.
Murder spiders. Yeah, that's amazing.
So there's a lot of stuff going on in this episode, and also the shot you see of the destruction of Babylon 5 with the one ship coming out of it is the shot you see at the end of the show when it gets decommissioned and it gets blown up, and Sheridan's ship's flying out after he went just to have one last final look at it before it got decommissioned. So they redo the shot because by the time they get to the 5th season, the special effects are a lot better. But the composition of the shot and the ship coming out, and it is the same one. So what she saw was completely correct, and it does happen. It's just that the circumstances of it are much more benign than you would expect. Yeah. But
absolutely.
Anything else from you, Hannah?
No, I just I'm so pleased that we got to this episode. I loved it.
Yeah.
I thought it was great.
Good old Babylon 5. All right. And also it's Sunday night, and Sunday night's a good day of the week to watch Babylon 5, I would say.
Absolutely.
We will be back very soon with episode 14 of season 1 of Babylon 5, TKO, very soon. Goodbye.
Bye.